Hi. So me on a what day is it today? It is Thursday. So I'm gonna do things a little bit different today. I'm going to well, what I did was I wrote things down. I wrote all the things I wanted to talk about in point form, so that way I'm not sort of tied to some elaborate sort of essay that has to be, sort of memorized and reread back to whoever I'm talking to, by heart or from memory or however you want to put it. So we'll begin with some housekeeping. As you can see, my beard is coming in. I'm kind of combing it out. There's some stragglers right around the edge there, but I'm getting rid of it with a comb, like very slowly. But I want the beard to kind of grow out until I, have a way of a good way of grooming it, a good way of, the more you have to work with, the better, I think. So there's my beard story. And along the same line, I'm kind of getting better at doing this video thing, only in the fact that I'm doing it earlier in the morning, and that I think I'm slowly becoming a morning person. So that's a good thing. As you can see, I kind of leave some of the chores to somebody else to do, which is always usually me. So I'm not like, somebody's gonna clean up after me, but it's usually the bed that isn't made, but it makes for a good composition, and it also looks like I had sex last night, which is always a good image to have. Otherwise, whatever, I don't care. Yeah, so that's 2 points. I'm gonna just check that off. And today's word is Sophism. I've always had some sort of a negative, there's always been, for me anyway, a negative connotation to sophism, to what that word means. I've never looked upon it as a compliment if somebody's always said to anybody else or even myself that you're a sophist, right? It always seems like it's filled with rhetoric and bullshit, and But if I were to sit down and think about it, I think atheism. And, hear me out on this one. I think atheism is basically is sophistry. I think it's a sophistic argument. Because the truth is, we don't know whether God exists or not. Even Richard Dawkins, the most famous atheist in the world, ends his book with, his famous book with, anything is possible, right? And he often usually claims that he's 95% atheist. So we don't know. We just don't know. Atheism or militant atheism or anti-theism, they're all just basically this argument that God does not exist. So it creates this dichotomy of he exists or he doesn't exist, and in creating that sort of argument, I think there's a lot of thought and a lot of intelligence that comes out of that dichotomy, or comes out of that diametric opposition. And I think that's important. I think so. Years later, I would say that I changed my mind on the negative connotation of a person who is a sophist, if I'm saying that correctly. I would say that there's a lot of good that could come from rhetoric and bullshit. It's a great way. And one of my favorite quotes is from, and this isn't actually sophistry or whatever, but it's setting up another dichotomy within which I think a lot of exploration can happen, a lot of learning can happen, et cetera, et cetera. But my favorite quote of Christopher Hitchens, and I forget if I ever find the documentary or the YouTube video, I'll post it, but is the idea that we often get told that we are all made of stardust. We're all celestial beings, essentially, because all the atoms in our body once came from a nuclear reaction within a star somewhere in the universe. And then he goes on to say, well, you know, we could consider ourselves stardust or whatever, but you know, we could also be considered nuclear waste. And you know, I like that because on some days I do feel like nuclear waste, and on some days I do feel like stardust. So that dichotomy too kind of, it lends a lot of itself to basically understanding how and who and where we see ourselves in the universe. We could be, you know, without getting too deeply into the depressing and the you know, uplifting side of things. It's, you know, it's kind of like, how do we see ourselves in the universe? Are we nuclear waste? Are we a scourge on the planet Earth? Or are we, you know, are we sort of, you know, these benevolent beings that, you know, create beauty and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, enough about that. I feel like I've been rambling about dichotomies too much. But on point, though, I read this thing last. I'll scratch that off, by the way. There you go. So before I end this video, I want to talk about horror movies. I read this thing last night, and it kind of popped into my head this morning as well. But horror movies, I remember my cousin once asking me, like, you know, if you're home alone and you hear some scary voice or something like that, do you believe in ghosts, and would that make you believe in ghosts, et cetera, et cetera? I don't. As an adult, my first instinct when I hear something scary in the house is to think it's somebody in the house, like a person in the house, like not a ghost. Like my first instinct is to think someone, a human being, a living human being is in the house. You know, as an adult, that's the way I reason things. I know for kids it's completely different. They live in a world of, like, you know, Disney and whimsy and fantastical things and blah blah blah. But so I just feel like when you're an adult, you just get to a point where you reason things out, and you automatically think of a reasoned approach to things that, you know, scare you and that invoke some sort of like irrationality or some sort of scattered thinking. I read some blog posts, though, where atheists claim that they became atheists and then they stopped being scared of scary things. I find that to be bullshit. I think fear is a very primal thing, and I think you know, if you see a horror movie, like it's usually scary because they use a number of mechanisms or a number of you know, devices that induce fear, like jarring noises. You know, the fact that we get irksome with, you know, open wounds, with you know, rotting flesh. I mean, these things are psychologically natural to have a fear of. So I don't believe this whole thing about, oh, well, you turn atheist and then you stop thinking about scary things because as atheists we are so reasoned and that we don't get scared by anything. So what I'm suggesting is basically I'm suggesting a scale type thing. You, as an adult, and maybe as an atheist, you have a certain reasoned approach to, you know, what is scary and what isn't, but you don't become atheist and then stop being scared. I mean, that's dumb. Like, I mean, you know, but at the same time, I'm saying as an adult, you don't, you know, you do grow into a reasoned approach to things, and there are things that won't scare you anymore. But yeah, anyway. But I, on the opposite side, I could also say that, you know, I think maybe religious people, like very religious people, I could possibly see how they might be a little bit more inclined to get to be afraid of ghostly things and scary movies, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, anyway, I don't like to pin people down, but to me, that's what it sounds like. I do not think you become atheist and then all of a sudden you're no longer scared of horror movies or anything scary. That didn't work. For me anyway, but that's my video for today, and I will talk to you later. Bye.